royal visit from a prince from Saudi Arabia. Our hands were kind of tied because he's a vegan and Muslims don't eat pork.
Wait,
We're
is
like,
this the prince that took over? Was it his
took,
father that passed away, or?
okay, so the prince whose father's passed away was this guy's dad's uncle.
Okay.
Because there's like 7,000 princes in the Saudi Arabian royal family. This guy's dad owns the majority stake in Citibank.
Oh wow.
Yeah, this guy, his dad gave him part of his inheritance early, and he's worth like $1 billion.
Oh, cool.
Are we online yet?
Yeah, we are good.
And I am done talking about this situation. Can I talk about it anymore?
Okay.
At first, I thought you were talking about a hypothetical prince. I was very confused.
No. This is a very real prince.
I thought you were talking about Prince.
We will talk about this prince at another time, sir.
All right. Well, I'm gonna get this going. Welcome to the Live Quest, a special Live Quest, a live version of the side quest. Wow, it's already going. The side quests, or whatever we name this podcast, which is going to go through some name changes here. But we are going to talk about review scores, the ever-changing landscape of review scores. Now, joining me, I'm Dolly Domovsky, by the way. Hello. You can watch the video and see me. You can see all my daughter's amazing artwork. She's taken over for me. Forget me being a designer. That's the future right there. Joining me, as usual, is the wonderful staff of SideQuesting, John Perry.
I owe TSA an apology. 3 years ago, I accused them of stealing my Swiss Army knife. I found it today in my luggage bag, tucked down in the corner, so I'm sorry. You didn't steal it. I lost it.
A 3-year confession. Robin Miller.
Hi. I don't know where I am, except that there's a bunch of books around me. I'm a PhD student, so if you see me disappear, assume I'm buried for life.
Ryan Gann.
Hi, I can't do this.
And Sam Dixon.
Hello. I have a cat next to me, I guess.
Oh, nice.
Hi, Katie. Okay.
And I'm sure people will be hopping on as we go along. Ryan just left the group. This was Ryan. Ryan left a message in the chat. This is what he said. Why'd you change the SideQuesting account? Whoa, hold on. I can't be on this. I have to do stuff for work tomorrow. Bye, everyone. Of course, our reviews editor takes off when we're talking about reviews. Totally fine. We have PAX East coming up here in a couple weeks.
Wait, hold up. Nobody told me about this.
What's that?
PAX East? What's PAX East?
We're going to PAX East. We're going to focus on just review scores and reviews for this podcast, but you can expect us to have a lot of awesome. Oh man, my jacket's stuck. You can expect us to have a lot of awesome good times with and around and at PAX East, our yearly journey to Baston. Baston. So we'll get into that on the next podcast here. But this week, it is about reviews and review scores and this amazing changing landscape. It's kind of I don't necessarily call it a pivotal point right now, but it is. There definitely seems to be a lot going on with review scores and Metacritic and so on. And so I posed the question to the rest of the team in an email a couple weeks ago. What are your thoughts on review scores? People are, there's publications right now that are potentially dropping review scores or altering the way they're doing reviews in general. Just to give you a brief kind of a summary of what's taken place with review scores over the last little bit of time. I think it was when Polygon launched about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, however long it was. They introduced kind of these rolling review scores, and what I mean by that is they post an initial review score, and they see how the game evolves and changes, and that review score can go up and down depending on the content. A lot of people buy games a month later, a year later, so their thought process is you would have that most up-to-date review score of of what the publisher created. that was Polygon's version. That was kind of the first big real change to the idea of review scores, and the way Metacritic, which is the top website out there, top collector of review scores, the way they do it and showcase review scores, they take an average of all the reviews out there, all the scores, and they give you like the one big review score. Now, the big problem with that over the years has been that every publication's weighted differently. So you have, Joe's blog has very few points, weighed for them, and then you have someone like GameSpot or Polygon have a lot more points, more pull on that score. Well, and those points were very unevenly distributed. Some publications that had been around for a decade or more had less of a score influence in publications.
Wait a minute, are you telling me they use different scales to grade video games?
Right, exactly, and different scales as well. So while some publication would use a 5-star, other groups would use a 10-point system or a 100-point system. Or
what if I wanted a half-star?
There were half stars. So there are a billion different ways that.
What if I want to use A, B, C, or D?
That was one up, I think, did that right before they shut down. How funny is it though that every time somebody switches review policies, they close? Fast forward to a little while ago, about a month or so ago, and Joystick said, "Hey, you know what, guys? We're going to get rid of review scores." Part of the problem for them was that it's so subjective that one reviewer is going to have a very different opinion of a game than the next reviewer. Someone is into one type of game, someone's not. So it's difficult to gauge that as a site-wide.
Your student is raising his hand.
Yeah, I see that. Go ahead, John. You can jump in any time.
Okay, well, I don't want to jump in because I want to interrupt you, but can I ask a question?
Yes.
If there's a review score at the bottom of the review, would you scroll to the bottom of the review and read the score and then quit out of the review? Because I would. That's what I do, because I'm a fucking 30-something moron that just once too long didn't read, and I just need to know what's up. So that's what I would do.
So that's very fair, and a very fair assessment. And that was one of the reasons that Joystick stopped doing it. Is they figured people are going to scroll to the bottom, they're going to find that score, and they're not going to read the text.
They were tweeting out the score as well. Let's be fair.
Yeah.
Let's call a peg a peg. They were trying to fit into the market, because right now Metacritic.
Freudian.
Right. Yes. They're moving their way back. They drive too much traffic. They drive more traffic than they should, based on their role in the world. Because in theory, their role should have been an aggregation of all the review sites. The problem is companies started putting too much stock into that aggregated score. And I as much as I love Joystick and places like that, I became a person that would see the review pop up and then scroll to the very bottom and see what they gave it, and then hope, and then base my choice on that, because I didn't want to risk ruining the game based on the review, and plus I didn't have time to read the review, and then I felt like a schmuck for not reading the review because somebody took a lot of time to write the review.
That's a great point. That's one thing that that a lot of people that I haven't really heard very often is that people don't want that game ruined. If you read the review, sometimes you'll get too much information. Sometimes there'll be massive spoilers.
Right, and it's not a problem with like a Call of Duty, but like a Dragon Age or a BioShock or whatever like that story-driven game is.
Sure.
I want the minimal information. Like it's like when I go to the theaters and I see a preview that I like. As soon as I figure out that I'm into that movie, I never want to see anything about it again, because too many times the high points are ruined by watching the trailers, the previews, because they're trying to get you the best possible points throughout the entire thing.
So just again, I'll kind of finish the summary. So Joystick gets that's totally fine, John. We love you. Joystick. By the way, joining us also is Tom Johnson. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, how's it going?
So Joystick gets rid of review scores, and they go to an editor's choice based system. So every game gets a review, but now you'll have an editor's choice kind of banner or logo that goes at the end of it. And then Eurogamer just last week, I think it was, or a week and a half ago, they went through a very similar change. They got rid of review scores completely as well and went to a sort of a gold silver method where the gold banner is the must play. It's a must have. It's game, and then you have their kind of secondary level, which is recommended, and then you have the avoid score. So, and everything else in between just doesn't get a score. So,
well, and this is what this is what Joystick tried to do with their 1 through 5, because they instead of doing a 1 through 5, they rated it a little different. Not a 1 through 5 best to play, but 1 through 5 depending on how much you like this type of game.
Right, and the only problem with that, again, I think it becomes people just look at it overall, look at that score, and says, "Oh, it's a 3," so I'm not going to bother wasting my time with it. Although a 3 for someone, like a 3 for me playing Red Faction, I played Red Faction Guerrilla, which was not a 5 game, but it was my game of the year when it came out because that was a fantastic game. But for other people, it was a 3.5 it rated. So just to kind of wrap that up, I posed a question to the team. The way side questing has been doing review scores is that initially we didn't have review scores. We weren't really worried about Metacritic, mostly because Metacritic does a great job of getting views and clicks to smaller sites like ours. The larger the site becomes, Metacritic doesn't really do anything, view-wise. So that's why you're seeing places like Joystick and Eurogamer and other sites start to potentially get rid of or drop review scores, or at least go to modified. Well,
yeah,
reviews.
Because they're big enough to not need the Metacritic tilt.
So we had, so we went to review scores. We decided let's do a 5-star, and that 5-star over time modified. Evolved to half stars in between. So,
and a hidden option for hearts.
And hidden option for hearts. So it was interesting in that it was great. It gets you the idea right away of seeing what that game is. But then again, it becomes very subjective to the reviewer, which in one respect, it's not necessarily 100% reflective of a publication, but depending on what you're going for, if like for me, I'm actually more interested in what specific reviewers, how they view games, the people that I kind of relate to that seem to have the same likes and dislikes as me, I'm much more apt to look at their reviews and review scores and so on and so forth, as opposed to overall site scores. So that's kind of what's happened over the last couple years in gaming and review scores. Like I said, the last few weeks have been especially interesting. So again, we decided let's open this up to the team and to the public, and for anybody that wants to give comments and so on, that's totally fine. To help us kind of shape how we're going to do reviews at side questing. So right now, the floor is completely open. If anybody wants to jump in with their ideas, thoughts, comments. John, you're itching.
I know, and I'm gonna say this like very succinctly. My big problem with the reviews was outside of the norm. It's the Maddens, the sports games, the Sonics, like the big franchise games.
Mm-hmm.
And coming up in this industry, it's like it always seemed like, well, so and so likes Sonic, so let's give him the Sonic game to review. And I always thought that was a big caveat. Like, why give that person the game to review when they already like the game? That gives them a leg up. Whether or not it's a bad game or a good game, it's gonna influence how they review it. Either they love this franchise and it's a bad game, so they're gonna review it more dramatically bad than they would have necessarily, or give it a positive just because they like it. I think you need to kind of push it around and let everybody do the thing. And that was always my thing. Like, whenever I heard, like, well, our bureau Sonic chief reviewed the game, like, why would you give that game to a person you know that had a bias to it in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
A game is a game. It should be fun to everyone on some kind. And I guess that's the problem with the reviews. There's no level 1 that lets everybody know this is how much fun it is or not. It's like a movie. Like, everybody loves it. But giving it to somebody that already loves the franchise, I think, kind of skews the bias on it. And that's the thing I saw that happened a lot. I mean, you always have your esports reviewers, your sports reviewers, your this franchise or that franchise reviewers. And that's one of the things I liked about SideQuest. We pushed it all around, no matter who was favorable to what thing. It was just like whoever's available first to do it.
Mm-hmm. There is definitely the notion that you're going to that giving a review to someone who's already a fan of the series is going to skew their review score. It's like if you're on a Nintendo fan website, right? They're going to rate games against other Nintendo games as opposed to
first party versus third party,
or as opposed to games in general, right? You're gonna see them talk about Zelda and Mario differently, only because they specifically focus on that, as opposed to in kind of the overall gaming, the gaming culture. So I think there's definitely I don't want to call it an issue, because it's not an issue per se, but there's definitely that aspect of reviews. But at the same time, don't you think that for those people that are Sonic fans, they're going to go to this person especially and say, hey, he's a Sonic fan, or she's a Sonic fan, or I'm using Sonic as a
no, because I did. That's why. That's cool.
Yeah, definitely. Sonic's in my head. I want a Sonic burger. This person's a Sonic fan, so I'm going to listen to them much more than I would somebody who's just overall, gaming fan, right? I mean, I think there's that aspect that that can actually build trust. And I brought it up earlier, just what I was saying. I tend to follow specific reviewers and their comments, right? So I wonder, with the Sonic fan and the Sonic fans out there, I think that maybe that's fine for them to review the game, but then, maybe I don't want to say there should be like not a disclosure, like a little. Well,
that's my thing. That's always my thing. It's like, what if I told you an EA employee was reviewing an EA game?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, you definitely want to know that, but nobody bats an eye when the Madden guy on the staff reviews the Madden game.
Well, sure. The only opposite point of that, though, is like, let's say that like a JRPG gets into the hands of somebody who's usually reviews like first-person shooters. Like, I feel like that could hurt the actual game and the review itself when you're looking at, like, maybe the person didn't enjoy it because they didn't understand the systems, or it's just something that they don't enjoy, like, or gravitate towards.
Yes,
so
I understand.
Their score gets skewed like in the negative way, and might actually like hurt fans that are like, or people that might try that game otherwise.
Right, and I totally understand that. That's where the subjectivity of especially games come into a factor. I think that maybe you have, in a perfect world, you have 2 or 3 people review a game that all like RPGs, whether it's JRPGs or Western RPGs or something like that, because I think when you have a person with a thing that they like particularly well review something that may or not be inside their wheelhouse. Well, what if I like JRPGs and all of a sudden I become the guy on staff that reviews all RPGs, whether or not they're JRPGs, Western RPGs, BioShock style RPGs, whatever, then where's my skew go, and then where do you follow along with me? And that's always been my thing about reviews. The biggest part about games journalism right now, outside of news, is finding that reviewer that fits your taste best. Because I mean, you need to find a person in each sector of the games you like that fits your, I don't know, weird word, likehood the best. Like that takes your same stance on it, because I mean that's the thing you have to find, because if not, then you end up buying bad games. And bad games are not something that anybody can afford these days, because there are too many of them coming out.
It's and feel free if everybody's more than welcome to chime in. I'm just dropping as thoughts pop up. I'm just throwing them out there.
Dropping knowledge bombs.
No, definitely. Dropping low coffee bombs. I think So one of the things I'm hearing, and by the way, we're not going to solve the world's review score thing right now. Review scores, I think we're all pretty confident saying review scores are going to be around no matter what. I think we're just trying to figure out what maybe is potentially a better way to look at them in general, especially when it comes to side questing. So I'm pointing my pen right now to Robin.
Okay, good.
Yeah, the order's different on every screen.
Yeah, right. I'm pointing over there. This person. No, so Robin, you've reviewed, I think, the last couple Assassin's Creed games.
Yeah.
For side questing, you're a big fan of the series. You're a huge fan of the series. And it lets you're very in tune with how their storytelling, their action, their gameplay, the mechanics, their character development, how everything seems to seems to kind of flow. So you're definitely passionate about what makes a good Assassin's Creed game versus what makes a mediocre one or a bad one. So I'm curious from that aspect. How do you kind of see it as someone who's already kind of been at least for us, the Assassin's Creed reviewer, so to speak?
I think, I can definitely see the valid concern behind having a fan approach and review a franchise. However, I definitely feel that, with game reviews in particular, there's an expectation that the reviewer, to some extent, is a fan of video games writ large, if not the franchise in particular. So while I can see that there's definitely a bias, I think part of our responsibility as reviewers is to set that aside while bearing in mind any useful context within the series itself. Take Assassin's Creed Unity, for example. Outside of the context of the other games, it might have seemed like a very novel and fresh idea. Like if someone who'd only played, say, Madden or Sonic in the past had approached it, they might have had their minds blown by it. However, if you've played the rest of the series, you can see the sort of inherent issues with it, obviously beyond the bugs and everything else, and how it seems almost a step backwards, especially after Black Flag. So I think in an ideal world, you'd not only have for each game like Assassin's Creed, you'd not only have like a review from someone who is a franchise fan, but also potentially an outside perspective to sort of balance that out and make sure that sort of the chance of a fan bias doesn't even have a chance to flourish.
I like that, like a pros and cons, like two people review the game, and I think larger sites, we can't do it. We don't have the pull, but if you take a larger site that could do it, take a somewhat fan of the series or like a neutral party, and then somebody that's opposite of the series, and put them both against each other and let them review it and do a pros and cons, and see where it ends up. Because if both of them agree it's a good game, to whatever level, then it's a good game.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe you don't necessarily need a pros and cons per se, because I mean EGM was really well known for doing those 3-person reviews. EGM and 1UP, they did a great job of doing those three, the three-player reviews. I almost wonder if like one of the things we do for side questing, I think we're all kind of leaning towards getting away from review scores, but still being able to give our readers and the public informed knowledge of what these games are and if they're good or not. And I definitely think that there is a strong side of the fan of the series who's knowledgeable of the series. Look, I'm going to give an example right now. My first foray into Assassin's Creed games was Assassin's Creed 3. I really enjoyed it. I didn't have issues with it because I'd never played a previous Assassin's Creed game.
Why did you play a previous Assassin's Creed game?
I just never got around to it. So for me, I'm diving into Assassin's Creed 3, and I'm thinking, wow, why is it getting bad reviews? It's a lot of fun. I mean, I had been playing Batman Arkham Origins or Arkham City and all that kind of stuff, and so this to me felt very good. Yeah, I figured out some of the issues as I played along, and Black Flag was amazing. It was a blast. I almost think that maybe what we could do, at least for side questing, is have those of us who are fans of specific series like Assassin's Creed or Zelda for me. Whoa!
Sorry about that.
It's a vote or no confidence for Robinson.
Yeah, vote. Maybe have these, have the reviewers who are big on the games review these games, because if you're a fan, you shouldn't not review the game, right? But at the same time, make other people allow other people to review the games as well through side questing, right? So you'll get the perspective of someone who is a true fan, and you'll get the perspective of someone who's just maybe an overall gamer or is a fan of a different kind that's kind of interested in this game, and then you can almost have these two separate reviews, and between those two reviews, kind of develop if this is going to be an editor's choice or a must-play type of thing, as opposed to just leaving it to one person to decide. John, it says Tom, it's you.
Yeah, that's the noise register I keep getting from Tom.
Oh, what
too.
keeps happening? Hold on.
Turn your TV down, Tom.
He's
Sorry,
watching
buddy.
the
I was
game.
trying to keep it on the low key, but you know what?
So how
Yeah,
does
follow
how is that idea kind of
I
where
lost almost.
No, and I like what I think Game Informer does it now. They do and Joystick did it for I think a day and a half before they got closed. They do a review, and then at the end they do like a too long didn't read and like a one paragraph like review, because that's what we all love our words as writers. Like we hope everybody inhales every word we spew out and just takes it in. All they really care about is it good or is it not, because they don't have time for us.
Mhm.
So
I mean that final paragraph really is that summary, though, right? Usually in a review,
well,
it's what
it
you
depends.
want.
It depends on the review. I mean, like Joystick's reviews weren't like that. They would the final paragraph would summarize like their first paragraph, just like you would like in college. But so to get really succinct about it, they would like Game Informer went one step forward, and after that final paragraph, they did the too long didn't read, and they would just put and then Joystick did that same thing when they got rid of the review scores.
Mm-hmm.
They just put in like, here's the thing you need to know, like right off the fact, and that's something that we could try and see what people do. I mean, and you can judge that by page views and time spent on page and like all these metrics that we have access to. But I think the bigger part is having an audience that buys into the personalities, because I mean that's where it's at on, especially with games on the internet, because everybody has so many varying opinions and tastes and whatever. You're not buying into somebody as a person. You're buying into them and the way they feel about games, the way you feel about games.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people go do review scores after they've already played the game, just to see how somebody else felt about it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I do it.
Especially with the rise of YouTube personas as well. Like we're finally shifting as an industry towards a more personal engagement. So like there's a wider spread understanding that once you read a review, it doesn't represent all of like say Polygon or Kotaku. It represents an individual, and I think the more people are aware that like there's a sort of onus on them to curate whom they do and do not like, and this perspectives that they sort of align themselves with. I think the sooner the industry as a whole can benefit from that.
Agreed. Totally agree.
And the consumer wants to validate their purchase. If they like the game and you don't, then they're going to disvalue you for one reason or another. Maybe you're right or you're wrong. Maybe they just like the game and it's a bad game. We all have bad games we like. That's how it is.
Guilty pleasures.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
But you want to, if you go through and play an entire game and you enjoy it, and then it gets panned in the reviews, you're going to keep looking until you find that one review that loved it, and you're like, that's my guy. That's the guy I want to.
That is very much how it works. You bring up a great point, because before I got into reviewing, this is like 10 years ago, before I even thought about the industry, I would just find people that
agreed with you.
That agreed with me, and that's you know what? That's completely human nature.
I do it all the time.
That agree with us, and we're gonna gravitate to those opinions, and I mean that's where fanboyism and fangirlism kind of starts, but that's totally fine, because I started following people that were huge Zelda fans, and I valued their opinion on Zelda over some of the other opinions. So I'm personally all for, and like I mentioned earlier, I'm all for having as many people review games as possible. Obviously, for a little inside baseball for some of our viewers and listeners, we do get a lot of, especially with like Steam and Xbox Live and PSN, all that stuff. We sometimes get extra review codes, 2, 3, 4, for the site, and a lot of that is just so we can get multiplayer going. So you'll have like you'll get like IDARB or whatever ahead of time, and they'll give us like 5 code just so we can get a multiplayer game going. So we can use those instead of forcing one person to do the site review. I am all for letting everybody have a chance, whoever gets one of these codes, to do a review, do something more personal, and I'm kind of drawing in the air on a sheet of paper here. Really kind of focus on that personal level, that individual, because you're going to make that connection more that way. Just like what you said, Robin. I'm going to focus on Robin's reviews for Assassin's Creed rather than just side questing's review. But I think maybe one caveat to that. Sorry to cut you off real quick, to Sam. Well, maybe one caveat to that, just leaning towards how to give like editor's choice or things like that. I do think there's merit in giving like a site-wide, like, boom, everybody or the majority of the staff on our site really recommend this game or this experience or whatever. There may be still opportunities to put one big, to put just a site recommendation on something.
Right, and that's always the thing. If enough people on the site think it's a good game, because a lot of us buy games, especially if it's a $60 game, a lot of us will buy it, whether or not we have review codes or not. And the biggest testament I can give to Dally on this is the very first time I asked Dally about writing for the site, he's like, "Yeah, I got you," and he gave me a code, and I reviewed the game. I'm like, this is fucking awful. It's just bad. And I'm like, I cannot write this, but I'm gonna give it to him, and maybe I'll never ever write again. For side quest. That was 5 years ago, and I wrote a mediocre. It wasn't bad. It was just not good. It was a mediocre review, and I wrote it, and other than grammatical errors, Dally didn't change a thing. He just said, "Yeah,
I mean, it's your opinion." Yeah.
So don't buy Space Invaders for Xbox 360 because it's bad.
So Sam, you were going to say something.
Yeah. Well, when I was like an editor in college, like I was noticing that like when people would come to me that want to write music reviews, they were always interested in reviewing like an album that they were looking forward to.
Mm-hmm.
Like no matter what, they weren't going to choose like some random just album that was coming out that week. They were going to choose something that they were looking forward to.
Mm-hmm.
So like what we ended up doing is switching it to just 4 reviewers on the same album, and like every week we just had one of them choose. So like the way we did it there is like occasionally we would have like a podcast or something letting people know that these are the genres and these are the normal bands that these people listen to outside of what we're reviewing, and then like would bring it up like while they're reviewing and compare it to like other things that they're used to listening to sort of like bring it into their wheelhouse. And like immediately we started seeing like people being more interested in that because they could find somebody whose likes they started to gravitate to. And also like it did help our reviewers sort of like get a grip on like some of the other stuff that's not like within them.
And maybe this is what we should do in SideQuest at the bottom of the page where it has the reviewer, like anytime it has somebody like that wrote the article, the news piece, or whatever, give their palette. Like, what do they like? What do they don't like? Where's their jib and jab type deal? I like sports games and shooters, but I don't like Sonic and Tails.
Hopefully we can get that in the updated profile pages that we get going.
No, I'm promising right now. Dally's gonna fix it. It'll be there.
Profile pages will be great.
Yeah, exactly. No, sorry, Robin, you were gonna say something.
I was just thinking in terms of kind of along the lines of what Sam was saying in terms of having something else to kind of expand and prevent tunnel vision. It would be a good idea for us to kind of make an effort, even if we have a distinguished taste, or not distinguished taste, that's not the phrase. We have a specific taste. Yeah, John, you can say distinguished taste. If we have a specific taste in video games, we ought to try to get out of our comfort zone. Perhaps if we're typically play a lot of big AAA titles, try something really obscure that we've never even heard of, just to keep ourselves abreast of the overall context going on in the whole industry at large, too.
Yeah, that's a great point, because and that kind of talk revolves around one of the reasons we dropped. We didn't do a typical game of the year thing this year, is because a lot of people don't play all the games. Some people play every game that's out there. So you have that you're weighing someone who's had the experience of the vast majority of the games that have been released against someone who's maybe played 10 or 5, and you're trying to pick the game of the year between those. It's difficult to really put that on a gauge, right? Then you have to start weighing how many,
especially on a community site where
exactly.
We can't write off video games as our life.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Sam, what and Robin, and I think what you guys are saying, it's letting our palettes expand a little bit, even if it's just for conversation purposes, and maybe doing like mini podcast reviews would be
well. And I think that's where the when we do community game nights, like I don't think anybody was super comfortable when we did Red Solstice, but everybody had a good time by the time we were over 2 hours later.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was tons of fun.
it was a very rough game, and we had a ton of fun trying not to get dead. And I mean that's all you can ask for. Like personally, I like multiplayer games that are cooperative. I don't care if I die. I'll play a Left 4 Dead or a Payday or something like that. I don't care if we lose. If we have fun losing,
Oh yeah.
that's where it's at. That's my bread and butter. That's the games I like. So when I had the opportunity to bring the crew on for that, I loved it. Now, did we die? Yes, we died a bunch. But that's my thing. So don't ask me to review that type of game impartially. But I also think we can expose the staff to those types of games more often, just like that.
And that would be ideal. That's a great point. That way, where everybody's at least getting a taste of the other things that are out there, the other cool experiences, so that when they do review the games, they can, they'll have a holistic idea of what the rest of the gaming industry has. Yet they can, I don't want to say they, we can be, we can review the games that we have at hand if we're fans of the series or not. So, I kind of what I'm hearing to kind of sum up a little bit of what we've talked about is. Let people review. People on staff kind of review what we're getting. We'll obviously let everybody have a chance at reviewing as many codes as we get. Let the fans review the games if they really want to. Don't not let a fan review the next Sonic just because they're a Sonic fan. Poor Sonic, by the way. We're picking on Sonic here.
He's so bad though. Like I loved him all my life. He's just a bad man.
I saw somebody tweet, this was the best tweet. The reason Sonic's legs grew because he had to wade through all the shitty titles he's had over the last few years. So that was so sad. I'm so prude. No, but don't tell the fans they can't review the games. Just hopefully try to get a few folks to review or at least give comment on. And maybe it's not necessarily a full-on review from everybody else because. It may be months before I finish a game that somebody has already reviewed, but it may be kind of interesting to do a second opinion or secondary thoughts, like a little mini article or post that has other viewpoints from other members of the staff, just to say, hey, even though Sam's a huge Sonic fan and he reviewed Sonic Boom 2, here, Dolly had a little bit of time with the game, John did, Robin.
Well, if you review a game and I happen to actually purchase myself or obtain a copy, then maybe I can do a subreddit on it.
Yeah.
And I can do mine, and then we can do the. Here's the thing I will promise. I handle a lot of the community stuff right now. If you reply us or something else, I will respond to you. It might not be that minute, but I will get back to you. So the ball's in your court. I will get back to you. So if you call us out, I will. I'm not going to go down. Yeah.
So does that sound? At least review-wise, does that sound like something that would be kind of interesting, at least from how to divide up potentially who's reviewing what and how they're reviewing it? Does that sound?
I think that's great.
Yeah, I think it could be a lot of fun. I mean, I think that way everybody has a chance to chime in on, even if they're not doing the full review, and you're getting a broader sweep of folks on the site. Because I know, especially with what was it? Destiny. So many of us play Destiny. All of us probably have Destiny.
You mean the worst game of the year? Yeah. Nobody plays it.
Yeah, exactly.
The most interesting game of the year.
Exactly. See, there you go. Our little secondary, even though our main article was like, Destiny's kind of meh. When we were initially reviewed it, the secondary thoughts could open up so much more conversation for folks that maybe aren't huge fans of Bungie's work or whatever. So I love that idea. I think it's a great idea, and even doing these little mini podcasts about the game could be a lot of fun.
In between those actual podcasts.
In between the actual whatever they're going to be when we relaunch it.
Speaking of Destiny, is it okay if I shift the conversation a little bit back to actual numerical review scores? Because I think I think that Destiny is a really great example of sort of the limitations of the old number, star, heart, what have you system. Because it was such an interesting situation where the game itself changed so drastically from what we were handed at launch. There was all these concerns about people not having enough time to invest in the game as an online thing. So it's really hard to quantify in a number format.
Yeah.
And as part of that reason, it's why I'm kind of in favor of getting rid of a more numerical grading thing and perhaps going towards a more like graphic or rubric styled review thing.
Sure.
And
you know the issue with that is, and this is the, like, I don't have a game type that I really like one way or another. What I do like is a multiplayer game. My bias there is I have a group of folks, there's about a dozen of them, that on any given night, if we all like the game, I can get 7, 8, 10 of us to play.
Even if you mildly like a game.
Yeah, if we mildly like it, because we're still playing Destiny. But the point
Still
is,
playing Battlefield 4.
yeah, hey, you shut your mouth. and that's my bias, because there's a lot of games that are really fun if you have a group. And Left 4 Dead was one of those games. Left 4 Dead is a great game if you have 4 players that are willing to play it. Left 4 Dead 2 is the same way. Destiny's the same way if you have 3 players. Why the God's green earth did Destiny pick 3 instead of 4? I do not know, but we'll let them pass for the moment because they gave us raids, which have 6. But, I mean, that's one of those games where if I didn't have friends on the internet that play these games, there's no way in hell I'd ever play these games. And I have a group of players that if we sit down and we come up with the time, we can all play. And so, I mean, that's my bias, and that's something I have to overcome when I'm doing these reviews and things like that, because it's not always the type of game; it's the quality of the people you play the game
quality
with.
of experience. Yeah. So, I mean, Robin, just to get back on what you were saying, I totally agree. I mean, that's the kind of game that it is difficult to score because it's going to evolve. You're going to have different experiences based on, like John said, how many people are playing, who's playing. I started off Destiny playing by myself. But let me say this though, there were times when Sam and other folks would hop in and help me, and especially during the beta. The beta was
so much fun.
Yeah. Which is so bizarre. It's like, I would have given the beta a 10 out of 10, but the game maybe not an 8
That's
out of 10.
because everybody was the same level. Everybody was doing the same thing.
And so, no, I totally agree. I think, and that's where the failure of review scores is. And you look at like the whole SimCity situation from a couple years ago or last year, whenever it was, when you couldn't get online. You know the game's going to work. Especially, this is going to be a whole side topic with games not working when they're out. Side quest. But you know the game's going to work, and you know the limitations of whatever the launch day issues are, but down the line things are hopefully going to get fixed. So how do you score a game that, and I kind of felt for Polygon because they had to update their score almost hourly with
and that's a smart thing to do.
Yeah.
You should. If you're going to review a game that's based on its multiplayer, like Destiny or Battlefield or anything like that has a large Titanfall, but a large multiplayer component that's the main focus of the game, you shouldn't give it a definitive score before the game launches, because that's dumb. We are not new. Everybody here has been down the road, and if you haven't, then you shouldn't mislead folks, because
I think that's what you're saying, right, Robin? Is that score? Yeah.
It's a living
I actually
thing.
like how Kotaku has handled it too. In addition to having a sort of and then having an updating review score, they sort of post updates about their continuing experiences in the game, particularly Destiny. I think Kirk Hamilton's in charge of that. So I think that's another really good way of handling it, so you're not erasing past scores that you've had.
I agree with that. You should never, if you get a bad score to begin with, you should just deal with it and suck it up, and then
that's a great point, Robin, because then you could go back, who knows, a year or two. I mean, look at World of Warcraft, right? World of Warcraft, that's a completely different game.
Battlefield 4.
Battlefield 4.
Right now.
Yeah, they're completely different games from when they launch, and so you
server stability you couldn't play a year ago.
But down the line, but let's say a year later, the reviewer goes back and says, "Hey, by the way, here are the things that I've been doing since then." It's almost like a living review without having to change the score.
All right, here's the thing, and I appreciate changing the score, but I think it should be an aggregated score, because I don't think we should reward developers and publishers for 1, shipping a broken game, or 2, shipping a broken platform. Right? Not the consoles, but the infrastructure. If your game's broke, don't ship it. If your infrastructure's broke, don't ship it. And I'm not going to give you a Well, it shipped with the 4.6, but it finalized a year later. Or what Joystick was 6 months or whatever. It finalized with a 9.7. I don't care if it's a great game a year later. You should be penalized for the aggregated score. Whatever all those aggregated scores were, month on month or week on week, that's your final score.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the only way we're going to stop them from shipping broken games. They didn't do it before they could do updates. But now that they can do updates, they do it a lot.
I think, and that again is a reason to stay away from scores. I think, and you could, if a game is broken right away, you don't, if it's a fantastic game but you can't get online, which this generation unfortunately has been a huge issue. I couldn't see myself giving it a editor's choice or whatever if we decide to go that route, just some type of graphic to say, here's a big thumbs up, must buy for this. But down the line, if the game really becomes fantastic, there's nothing that says you can't add that editor's choice in a year down the line or wherever, right?
I concur.
Because Destiny now is very different than from when it launched. They've tweaked enough, they've cleaned up a lot.
It has 85 different payment methods now.
Yeah, exactly. To me, it's a lot more. It's actually more enjoyable now than it was when it initially launched. And
no longer a cave shooting simulator.
Exactly. Look at, like, Assassin's Creed had a lot of issues when it, Unity had a lot of issues when it launched with the faces melting. Obviously, they've cleaned things up now. And if that was the kind of game that was fantastic, except for that, you could now, I think, you could go back now and make those the update to the review, like like they're doing on Kotaku and other sites. So I'm all for doing those updates, and I guess maybe I think it sounds like we're all leaning towards some type of graphic or an editor's choice type of thing. Although I would say that we don't leave it to a specific reviewer to do that. I would say that's where you need that's where you get the entire staff, or you get a few folks on the staff to talk about the game. And
I think so. I think it needs to be a cumulative review.
Yeah, it has to be. That's got to be the cumulative thing where it's that.
If it starts with a 5.0 and then ends up with a 10.0 2 years later, well then you cut that. And then
but it'll be 0.0 because we're not going to do scores.
Well, yeah, but that's the point. It's whatever.
Right. Yeah.
You need the feel of the entire product, not just what you got at that moment. Because it's bad, and that's the way I used to review games. And whenever I'd pop in a game, it's like, oh, the day one update, and it's 300 megs. I'm like, how do you know that that person's going to have
these days? Yeah.
Well, and personally, in my personal front is now I don't buy games online anymore. Do you know why?
Mm-hmm.
A $50 game or a $60 game is around about 50 to 60 gigs. Well, if I go over my $300 gigabyte a month,
especially
it's an extra $10 for every 50 gigs I go. Every 50 gigs I go over, it's an extra $5.
Yeah.
So I'll go buy the game in person because it's cheaper for me to go buy a game than it is to download it and do it. So now you're charging me to download what Halo Master or whatever was 15 gigs. No, that's silly. That's not a day one patch. That's a way to skirt the system.
All right. So I'm really liking what we're saying here about review scores, or about reviews in general, and how we could do them. So I again put the focus on the individual, because people are going to tie into people. If they're going to relate to folks who like the games that they like, they can connect with, and then we can give the so it lets the reviewer breathe a little bit more too, I think.
Yeah, Giant Bomb does a great point of that. Their individual personalities and their reviews feed those scores.
And then let the editor's choice stuff be a.
Who's the editor?
Well,
yeah, I was gonna suggest a semantic change there.
Yeah, great point.
Staff choice or editor's choice? Because you're the editor, sir.
That's
editor implies the person going through and editing the review. So I think staff choice or team choice. Since
team choice. Team. We can do team.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, team choice. Yeah.
It's like the Team Choice Awards, but we're not even on Nickelodeon.
I like that. Yeah, Team Choice. I think that's.
We're not even breaking copyright. Let's roll with it.
Yeah, well, not Team Choice.
Team Choice.
Yeah. No, that works out perfect. Yeah, I think that's great. And then I like the idea of these secondary reviews from folks who are also playing the game, whether it's one collective post of a few different opinions, which could be great, or smaller posts.
I do like the rebuttal or the confirmation reviews.
Yeah, I think those are great. Yep.
All right, so it's up to you guys.
This is great.
What say you? You get at us at SideQuesting on Twitter, at SideQuesting on Facebook, at SideQuesting@gmail.com. Let us know what you think.
Yeah, I think so far it's sounding pretty good, and I think it'll make me, from just the standpoint of things I'm hearing, it'll make things much more relatable to our readers and viewers. And this also relates to like video reviews and things like that we're going to be doing. So, great, awesome conversation. I think review scores aren't going away. To kind of sum up everything, review scores aren't going away, but I definitely think we definitely think there's ways where the system can be tweaked, and there can be ways to make it much more relevant to the individual readers and individual writers, as opposed to the be-all, end-all that it is today. So it is really hard, just being somebody who does art, and my poor daughter with her beautiful sketches, in the future there.
Masterpiece.
That's a masterpiece. If you rate that a 1 out of 10, no. Notice I have that on.
I have a daughter of my own. Don't get me started.
There's Justin Russo does some awesome. He did those the artworks at Kickstarter a while back.
That is very nice.
That's not penis hummingbird. I see that.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Sorry about that. So great conversation tonight, everybody. I really definitely appreciate everybody being there, and everybody who had to bail. Ryan for being afraid, and Tom whose battery died.
Well, you did reveal Ryan's true identity. So.
You doxed him a little bit.
I doxed him. Yeah, there you go.
He's part of Gamergate
fantastic. Now. Yeah, fantastic job, everyone. I think this is a great conversation. It was a lot of fun to talk about it, and I think some great salient points. And I know site-wise, at least side questing wise, we're in. This has led to a great, I think, a great format. So for those folks who are reading or watching or listening. Probably not reading. Since you might have captions. I don't know. What I'll do is I'm going to write this up as a just kind of a short summary of what we talked about. I'm going to send it to the staff internally just to bless it, whatever they do, and then I'll post this. Yeah. I'll post this on the site.
So,
hey. Oh, there you go. That's awesome.
Let Robin do it. We're good.
I'll post this on the site as our official review process update, so that our everybody who visits us can be in the know.
Hey, and then if you're going to PAX, get up at us. At SideQuesting.com. At SideQuesting.com. Dally, what is your new damn Twitter? I don't know anymore.
It's Dolly Demovsky. No,
nobody can spell that. So okay, spell
at
it for
SideQuesting at Dolly Demovsky. What are your John? What's your Twitter?
At John Perry, Parie.
Robin, what's yours?
At A Robin Miller. My name is spelled with a Y though, so it's ROBYN.
Sam.
I believe it's at SamDI79 now. I'm pretty sure.
Yep. Yeah. And then at that Tom Johnson and at the Ryan Gaines, you can find them as well.
Get at us, because I'm going to get a bunch of swag at PAX, and I'm going to give that shit away. So you just got to tell me you're there, and I'll meet you somewhere. If it's by a beer cart, odds are
if it's by a beer cart,
hey, I'm just telling you.
Be there.
I will meet you there.
It's great. We'll be at PAX. We'll probably try to get a podcast out before then as well. But we're excited about PAX. PAX is always a lot of fun. We'll talk more about that as the event gets closer. So, thanks for everybody for listening. I know we're recording at the same time as wrestling.
Wrestling. Good thing it's a podcast.
Competition.
There you go. All right. Find us at sidequesting.com. Rate and review us on the iTunes. Favorite us and subscribe to us, whatever, on YouTube. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye.